In episode 3 of Cozy Cuentos, I read from another Project Gutenberg ebook called Philippine Folktales, compiled and annotated by Mabel Cook Cole, published in 1916. Aponi Bolinayan and the Sun, from the Tinguian tribe. One day, Aponi Bolinayan and her sister-in-law went out to gather greens. They walked to the woods, to the place where the siksiklat grew, for the tender leaves of this vine were very good to eat. Suddenly, while searching about in the underbrush, Aponi Bonilayan cried out with joy, for she had found the vine, and she started to pick the leaves. Pull as hard as she would, however, the leaves did not come loose, and all at once the vine wound itself around her body and began carrying her upward. Far up through the air she went until she reached the sky, and there the vine set her down under a tree. Aponi Bolinayan was so surprised to find herself in the sky. For some time she just sat and looked around, and then, hearing a rooster crow, she arose to see if she could find it. Not far from where she sat was a beautiful spring surrounded by tall betel nut leaves, whose tops were pure gold. Rare beads were the sands of the spring, and the place where the women set their jars when they came to dip water was a large golden plate. As Aponi Bolinayan stood admiring the beauties of the spring, she beheld a small house nearby, and she was filled with fear lest the owner should find her there. She looked about for some means of escape, and finally climbed to the top of a betel nut tree and hid. Now, the owner of this house was Ini Init, the sun, but he was never at home in the daylight, for it was his duty to shine in the sky and give light to all the world. At the close of the day, when the big star took his place in the sky to shine through the night, Ini Init returned to his house, but early the next morning he was always off again. From her place on top of the betel nut tree, Aponi Bolinayan saw the sun when he came home at evening time, and again the next morning when she saw him leave. When she was sure he was out of sight, she climbed down and entered his dwelling, for she was very hungry. She cooked rice, and into a pot of boiling water she dropped a stick which immediately became fish, so that she had all she wished to eat. When she was no longer hungry, she lay down on the bed to sleep. Now, late in the afternoon, Ini Init returned from his work and went to fish in the river near his house, where he caught a big fish. While he sat on the bank cleaning his catch, he happened to look up towards his house and was startled to see that it appeared to be on fire. He hurried home, but when he reached the house he saw that it was not burning at all, and he entered. On his bed he beheld what looked like a flame of fire, but upon going closer he found that it was a beautiful woman fast asleep. Ini Init stood for some time wondering what he should do. Then he decided to cook some food and invite this lovely creature to eat with him. He put rice over the fire to boil and cut into pieces the fish he had caught. The noise of this awakened Aponi Bonilayan, and she slipped out of the house and back to the top of the betel nut tree. The sun did not see her leave, and when the food was prepared he called out to her, but the bed was empty and he had to eat alone. That night Ini Init could not sleep well, for all the time he wondered who the beautiful woman could be. The next morning, however, he rose as usual and set forth to shine in the sky, for that was his work. That day, Aponi Bonilayan stole again to the house of the sun and cooked food. When she returned to the betel nut tree she left, rice and fish was ready for the sun when he came home. Late in the afternoon, Ini Init went into his home, and when he found pots of hot rice and fish over the fire, he was greatly troubled. After he had eaten, he walked a long time in the fresh air. "Perhaps it is done by the lovely woman who looks like a flame of fire," he said. "If she comes again, I will try to catch her." The next day, The sun shone in the sky as before. When the afternoon grew late, he called to the big star to hurry to take his place, for he was impatient to come home. As he drew near to the house, he saw that it again looked as if it was on fire. He crept quietly up the ladder, and when he reached the top, he sprang in and shut the door behind him. Aponi-Bolilayan, who was cooking rice over the fire, was surprised and angry that she had been caught. But the sun gave her betel nut, which was covered with gold, and they chewed together and told each other their names. Then Aponi-Bolilayan took up the rice and fish, and as they ate, talked together and became acquainted. After some time, Aponi-Bolilayan and the sun were married, and every morning the sun went to shine in the sky, and upon his return, at night, he found his supper ready for him. He began to be troubled, however, to know where the food came from, for though he brought home a fine fish every night, Aponi-Bolilayan always refused to cook it. One night he watched her prepare their meal, and saw that instead of the nice fish he had brought, she only dropped a stick in the pot of boiling water. "Why did you try to cook a stick?" asked Iniinit in surprise. "So that we can have fish to eat," answered his wife. "If you cook that stick for a month, it will not be soft," said Iniinit. "Take this fish I had caught in the net, for it will be good." But Aponi-Bolilayan only laughed at him, and when they were ready to eat, she took the cover of the pot, and there was plenty of nice soft fish. The next night and the next, Aponi-Bolilayan cooked the stick, and Iniinit became greatly troubled, for he saw that though the stick always supplied them with fish, it never grew smaller. The next night and the next, Aponi-Bolilayan cooked the stick, and Iniinit became greatly troubled, for he saw that though the stick always supplied them with fish, it never grew smaller. Finally, he asked Aponi-Bolilayan again why it was that she cooked the stick instead of the fish he had brought, and she said, "Do you not know of the woman on earth who has magical powers and can change things?" "Yes," answered the sun, "and now I know that you have great power." "Well then," said his wife, "do not ask again why I cooked the stick." And they ate their supper of rice and the fish which the stick made. One night, not long after this, Aponi-Bolilayan told her husband that she wanted to go with him the next day when he made light in the sky. "Oh no, you cannot," said the sun, "for it is very hot up there, and you cannot stand the heat." "We will take many blankets and pillows," said the woman, "and when the heat becomes very great, I will hide under them." Again and again, Iniinit begged her not to go, but, as often, she insisted on accompanying him, and early in the morning they set out, carrying with them many blankets and pillows. First, they went to the east, and as soon as they arrived, the sun began to shine, and Aponi-Bolilayan was with him. They traveled towards the west, and when morning had passed into noontime, and they reached the middle of the sky, Aponi-Bolilayan was so hot that she melted and became oil. Then Iniinit put her into a bottle and wrapped her in the blankets and pillows and dropped her down to earth. Now, one of the women of Aponi-Bolilayan's town was in the spring dipping water when she heard something fall near her. Turning to look, she beheld a bundle of beautiful blankets and pillows, which she began to unroll, and inside she found the most beautiful woman she had ever seen. Frightened at her discovery, the woman ran as fast as she could into town, where she called the people together and told them to come at once to the spring. They all hastened to the spot where they found Aponi-Bolilayan, for whom they had been searching for everywhere. "Where have you been?" asked her father. "We have searched all over the world, and we could not find you." "I've come from Pindayan," answered Aponi-Bolilayan. "Enemies of our people kept me there till I made my escape while they were asleep at night." All were filled with joy that the lost one had returned, and they decided that at the next moon they would perform a ceremony for the spirits and invite all the relatives who were mourning for Aponi-Bolilayan. So they began to prepare for the ceremony. And while they were pounding rice, Aponi Bolinayan asked her mother to prick her little finger where it itched. And as she did so, a beautiful baby boy popped out. The people were very much surprised at this, and they noticed that every time he was bathed, the baby grew very fast, so that in a short time he was able to walk. Then they were anxious to know who was the husband of Aponi Bolinayan, but she could not tell them, and they decided to invite everyone in the world to the ceremony that they may not overlook him. They sent for the betel nuts that were covered with gold, and when they had oiled them, they commanded them to go to all the towns and compel the people to come to the ceremony. If anyone refuses to come, row on his knee, said the people, and the betel nuts departed to do as they were bidden. As the guests began to arrive, the people watched carefully for one who might be the husband of Aponi Bolinayan. But no one... As the guests began to arrive, the people watched carefully for the one who might be the husband of Aponi Bolinayan. But none appeared, and they were greatly troubled. Finally, they went to the old woman, Alokotan, who was able to talk to the spirits, and begged her to find what town had not been visited by the betel nuts, which had been sent to invite the people. After she had consulted the spirits, the old woman said, "You have invited all the people except Iniinit, who lives up above. Now you must send a betel nut to summon him. It may be that he is the husband of Aponi Bolinayan, for the 6 siklat vine carried her up when she went to gather her grains." So a betel nut was called and bidden to summon Iniinit. The betel nut went up to the sun, who was in his house, and said, "Good morning, sun. I have come to summon you to a ceremony which the father and the mother of Aponi Bolinayan are making for the spirits. If you do not want to go, I will grow on your head." "Grow on my head," said the sun. "I do not wish to go." So the betel nut jumped upon his head and grew until it became so tall that the sun was not able to carry it, and he was in great pain. "Oh, grow on my pig," begged the sun. So the betel nut jumped upon the pig's head and grew, but it was so heavy that the pig could not carry it and squealed all the time. At last the sun saw that he would have to obey the summons, and he said to the betel nut, "Get off my pig, and I will go." So Iniinit came to the ceremony, and as soon as Aponi Bolinayan and the baby saw him, they were very happy and ran to meet him. Then the people knew that this was the husband of Aponi Bolinayan, and they waited eagerly for him to come up to them. As he drew near, however, they saw that he did not walk, for he was round, and then they perceived that he was not a man but a large stone. All her relatives were very angry to find out that Aponi Bolinayan had married a stone. They compelled her to take off her beads and her good clothes, for they said she must now dress in old clothes and go again to live with the stone. So Aponi Bolinayan put on the rags that they had brought her, and at once set out with the stone for his home. No sooner than they arrived there, however, than he became a handsome man, and they were very happy. "In 1 moon," said the sun, "we will make a ceremony for the spirit, and I will pay your father and mother the marriage price for you." This pleased Aponi Bolinayan very much, and they used magic so that they had many neighbors who came to pound rice for them and to build a large spirit house. Then they sent oiled betel nuts to summon their relatives for the ceremony. The father of Aponi Bolinayan did not want to go, but the betel nut threatened to grow on his knee if he did not. So he commanded all the people in the town to wash their hair and their clothes, and when all was ready, they set out. When they had reached the town, they were greatly surprised to find the stone had become a man, and when they chewed the magic betel nuts to see who he might be, it was discovered that he was the son of a couple in Aponi Bolinayan's own town, and the people all rejoiced that this couple had found the son whom they had thought lost. They named him Aponi Tulao, and his parents paid the marriage price for his wife, the spirit house 9 times full of valuable jars. After that, all danced and made merry for 1 moon, And when the people departed for their homes, Iniinit and his wife went with them to live on the earth. The end. For those who want to listen further, there is a brief background on the Tingian tribe from which the story is from. The dim light of stars filtered through the leafy canopy above us, and the shadowy form of our guide once more appeared at my horse's head. It was only for an instant, however. Then we were plunged again in the inky darkness of a tropical jungle. We had planned to reach the distant Tingian village in the late afternoon, but had failed to reckon with the deliberateness of native carriers. It was only by urging our horses that we were able to ford the broad Abra. The last rays of sun dropped behind the mountains. And then, in this land of no twilights, the night had settled quickly over us. We had made our way up the mountainside, through the thick jungle, only to find the trail, long imperceptible to us, had escaped even the keen eyes of our guide. For several hours we wandered about, lost in the darkness. On and on we went, through narrow paths, steep in places, and made rough and dangerous by sharp rocks, as well as by those long creepers of the jungle, whose thorny fingers are ever ready to seize horse or rider. Occasionally, we came out of the forest only to cross rocky mountain streams, or perhaps it was the same stream that we crossed many times. Our horses, becoming weary and uncertain of foot, grew more and more reluctant to plunge into the dark, swiftly flowing river. Our patience was nearly exhausted when we at last caught sight of dim lights in the valley below. Half an hour later, we rode into Manabo. I shall never forget that first picture. It was a weird spectacle. Coming out of the darkness, we were almost convinced that we had entered a new world. Against the blackness of the night, grass-roofed houses stood outlined in the dim light of a bonfire. And squatting around the fire, unclad, save for gay blankets wrapped about their shoulders, were brown-skinned men smoking long pipes, while women bedecked with bright beads were spinning cotton. As they worked in the flickering light, they stretched their distaffs at arm's length into the air, like witches waving their wands. And with that, the elfland picture was complete. In the stillness of the night, a single voice could be heard reciting some tale in a sing-song tone, which was interrupted only with peals of laughter burst forth from the listeners, or when a scrawny dog rose to bark at an imaginary noise, until the shouts of the men quieted him and he returned to his bed in the warm ashes. Later, we learned that these were the regular social gatherings of the Tingian, and every night during the dry season, one or more of these bonfires were to be seen in the village. After we had attained to the footing of welcome guests in these circles, we found that a good storyteller was always present, and while the men smoked, the women spun, and the dogs slept, he entertained us with tales of heroes who knew the magic of the betel nut, or with stories of spirits and their power over the lives of men. Mabel Cook Cole.